Hello, and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 227. Today we are talking grit and perseverance, two traits that everybody needs who wants to be successful. And if you're thinking about becoming a property developer, or maybe you already are, then if you already are, you know how important it is. And if you are thinking about it, this episode is for you, because when you realize how much grit and perseverance play a part in your success, you'll want to know how to get better at it. So let's jump on into episode 227. Hello, welcome to episode 227, Grit and Perseverance today. Marty Woodhart, on the way to you. This book, you're our book winner this week. Hey, so we're talking grit and perseverance, and the reason I wanted to do a solo episode about this one today is because it's so important that we grow these, that we grow our level of grit, that we grow our ability to persevere. I write about perseverance in my book, actually, 3 ones in, for those of you who may have read it. Perseverance is willpower undefeated. And that's all it is. When you persevere, you just don't give up. And it takes grit for you to do that. So in property development, it's easy to look successful, and people assume that others become successful due to luck or money or career or connections. But the truth is, grit often plays a really big role in our success and in property developers' success, because it's what keeps you going when projects take longer than planned, or when finance fall through, or when you hit yet another delay, or council's holding you up, or you're not sure, whether a site works, or you've been looking and looking and you haven't been able to find one. So it's the grit that we need right then and there to keep us going, so we do persevere. So research shows us that grit can actually explain about 25% of the difference between people who succeed and people who don't. That's more than talent and IQ. And a Harvard Business Review study showed that 92% of people who achieve long-term goals say perseverance, not intelligence, was the key factor. Holy moly. And I want you to think back to some other area in your life, because what we're talking about today applies in every area of your life. And there'll be some areas that you do have more grit, more perseverance, and there'll be areas that you're already successful in. It could be your health. You might be an avid gym goer, and you really make sure that you are constantly working out and staying to your schedule. It could be with your health. You might be quite diligent with your eating. It could be with the way you save money. It could be with the way you treat people. There'll be areas in your life that are already fabulous, and that has taken perseverance and grit. Things aren't always easy. So let's unpack what grit really means and why it matters, and how you can build more of it, both in your development journey and in life. Okay, let's understand grit. The term grit comes from Angela Duckworth, who defines it as passion and perseverance and long-term goals. And it's the ability to keep showing up even when motivation fades or progress slows to almost a crawl. You feel like things aren't going exactly how you want them, and grit is what has to jump in there and get you going. So Duckworth's studies are fascinating, because she followed West Point cadets through training and found that grit, not IQ and not fitness, not leadership scores, that it was grit that was the best predictor of those who would make it through the program. And in another study, she looked at the National Spelling Bee contest. And you might know this one, or you may not. Kids with the highest grit scores practiced 41% more and consistently placed higher, even when they weren't actually the most naturally talented. So, we're talking children here, and this flows on into adulthood. So across 11 studies, she found grit correlated more strongly with success than talent. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm saying it's every time over talent. And it determines our level of success. So in other words, persistence beats potential most of the time. Whoa, I'm going to say that again. Persistence beats potential most of the time. So that's powerful, because it reminds us that people who succeed aren't necessarily the smartest, and they're not necessarily the most gifted. They're the ones who keep turning up when the going gets tough. and they keep going. And for those of you listening that are parents, you might know that there's been many books written about how we should say to our children, keep trying, keep doing it, rather than telling them how smart they are. We encourage them because of the amount of effort they put in, which effectively is perseverance and grit. So what does grit look like in practice? Have you ever thought about that? What does grit look like in practice to you? Let's look at grit in action. Think about Thomas Edison. He tested over 1,000 different filaments before perfecting the light bulb. Holy moly, if that isn't persistence, what is? J.K. Rowling, she was rejected by 12 publishers. And before she made it with Harry Potter, there were 12 lots of rejection. Holy moly, that is a lot. But she became a global hit. So it was the persistence, the grit that got her going. And we all know the Colonel Sanders story. He pitched his chicken to over 1,000 restaurants before someone said yes. Holy heck. He became one of the most well-known chicken restaurants in the world, I would say. So over 1,000 people said no to him. And what was it that got him there? It was persistence. So each of those people had the same experiences that many developers do: rejection, frustration, self-doubt. That is a biggie. Self-doubt is a biggie. And if you're listening now thinking, I'd really like to, but I don't think I can. Well, crikey, if I can, you can. So what's the difference? They didn't stop. Those people did not stop. And in property development, grit shows up in similar ways. You might spend months or even years negotiating with council. You might refinance mid-project or face unexpected blowouts, or all sorts of things can happen that we know happen as developers. And it's not always bad things. We do have fabulous things happen as well. But according to CoreLogic, the average residential development takes 24 to 36 months from concept to completion. And that's a long time to stay motivated. And yet it's the developers who stay consistent and make it through. And remember that the residential development space in Australia is made up of 75% us, the little people. So it's only the big businesses that do the 25%. So there are a few of us, aren't there, that do have a bit of grit, that do have that determination, who are happy to persevere. And is that you? Are you one of those people that are like, yeah, I'm doing that? And if you're not, and if you find that maybe in lots of areas of your life, maybe in your health, maybe your relationships, your wealth, maybe you don't like your job, maybe you don't like the people that you live with, or whatever that looks like, whatever your life is like right now, has there been a level of perseverance or grit or determination that you've let slide? And then when that happens, has that made you just not succeed in those areas of your life? Because success comes from persevering. And when we think things are going to be easy, we have to realize that they're not. Life isn't easy. Some parts of it are. Some parts are easy, and some parts are not. And that is life. It has to balance itself out. So what we do know about people that are successful in property development are the ones that keep going. The ones that do one and think, yeah, okay, I'm moving on, I'm doing another. And they consistently move forward and become very successful. I think if you listen back to the interview podcasts that we've done with the people, there's been numerous, but they show that the grit, perseverance, determination that people have, those people have become very successful in property development because they've kept going. And that's what we need to do. And sometimes you might find that it's a lonely journey, and maybe that means your second one is a joint venture. You do it with somebody, or you do it, you invest in somebody else's. Maybe you need a time off, invest in somebody else's, and then jump back in. It just depends on what you want. But I think the key here is momentum and consistency. So keep up the momentum. I talked to somebody this morning, and he's invested in our latest childcare development. And he said, I want to do this, get my own developments underway as well, but keep investing in what we have and then rolling it over to the next. And that's a way for him to stay motivated, still have cash going on, building up that war chest and investing with us, and then do his own developments as well. So why not you? And if not you, then who? So this is what people need to think. Why not you? If this is something you want, then you should do it. Okay, the importance of education and knowing what you need to know. You can't bumble your way through property development because the mistakes are too costly. It's not like you're doing a triathlon for the first time and then you realize at the end you didn't have enough water on board, or you should have taken Powerade, or you should have eaten more the day before. This has monumental outcomes, and people can make a lot of money through property development. You'd be surprised at how many phone calls we have of people trying to get a discount, or do they have to pay for it? When you think about people go to university and get a qualification and then spend years paying off that qualification. This pales in comparison, and the turnaround for getting your money back tenfold, even bigger than tenfold. If you come to the masterclasses, you see Bob talk through the numbers of what people get back. It's instant. Within 2 years, you've got your money back straight away. So if you have thought about property development, well, then it is important to be educated, to get mentorship, to know exactly what it is that you need to know before you move forward. Because there was an interesting stat, actually, Small Business Australia report in 2023 found that 1 in 3 startup property ventures fail due to lack of education and financial planning. So developers who engage in mentorship or formal training are 2.4 times more likely to complete their project successfully. Holy heckers, why would you not? And this tells you something more important about grit, because grit needs a guide. You can't just have all the enthusiasm in the world and go rip, tear, and bust, making mistakes. You need to have that guide. You need to have that journey on the way. You can't grit your way through a bad FISO or structure a deal badly. You need to know exactly what it is you're doing, and then use that grit, use that determination to create that success, to generate more motivation for yourself. So Duckworth also found that people who actively seek to improve will go through about 30% faster. And I do definitely believe that the people we work with, definitely you get answers faster, you learn faster about what's next, and so your outcomes will be faster. And why not? I do find that a lot of people that I do work with are motivated, do have grit, do have perseverance. So if that is you, then and you're thinking about property development, stop thinking about it, just do it. So how do you build it? How do you build your grit and perseverance? Well, there are a few evidence-based strategies. You need to set long-term goals. People who have defined 5-10-year goals are over 75% more likely to stay on course when things get tough. And we all know things get tough. And when I say things get tough, sometimes things pop up in the way, and you need to see them as on the way, not in the way. Anyone who listens to my Bounce Back Better podcast, these are kind of words that I throw out all of the time. The other thing you need to do to grow your grit and perseverance is to embrace discomfort. Deliberate practice, working on hard things for short bursts, for focus bursts, that really does strengthen your mental endurance. And is that something you do? Do you work on things that are quite difficult and you make yourself do them? I know Aaron, who's part of the Property Mastermind team, mad runner. He just ran a race for 100 kilometres, and Bob and I supported him on that. 100 kilometres was his run. If that is not perseverance and grit at its peak, what is? So he lets that flow over into many areas of his life. The other thing for grit is rely on habits, not motivation. So you're more likely to do things when they become habitual rather than when you feel like it. And everybody I know that say the words, I don't actually feel like doing that, they are people you will notice do lack a bit of success in the areas of their life, in many areas actually. It's something that I do notice, because grit and perseverance, you're not always going to feel like doing that thing that you need to do. It's not going to feel easy. I spoke with somebody yesterday, he's in the mentoring program, and he said to me, I just haven't really had a chance and I want 4 hours this week to sit down and do something. I said, how about you just carve out 2? And if maybe that's you listening today, you might think, I don't have enough time right now. Just whatever time you think you do have, halve it. and think, I'm going to start with that for this week and next week, or for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to do that and then add to it, rather than making that initial step too big. So start creating a habit of, maybe it's half an hour every day for 7 days, and then flow that on for another 7 days. Keep doing it. There was a great study done by James Clear who talks about ticking off when you do something, to get that momentum, but just being okay to miss once, but promising yourself you will never miss twice. And I'm okay to miss something once, because life happens and we run out of time, and that's just it. But never allow yourself to miss twice. So you can do that. The other one, another great way to grow that grit muscle, that perseverance muscle, is to celebrate progress. Recognition increases persistence by close to 25%. And so you need to track your wins and say to yourself, well done me, no matter how big or how small. For people that are more of a captain personality like me, people that are quite goal focused and just go toward our goals, that's something we probably don't do that well. So if you're listening now thinking, I probably don't do it that well. For those who follow anything that I do, you may have recently heard that we're going to New York this afternoon, actually. So I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing a solo as well, because Bob's tidying up some loose ends before we go. I'm going to New York to receive 4 Stevie Awards. They're like the Golden Globes of business. I'm winning 4 of them. Would I normally have celebrated that success? No. Would I normally have put myself forward for that? No. That this year was about me building, reflecting, acknowledging my wins, because many of us become the world's best kept secret, and that's not who I want to be. I'm ready to show people who I am. And are you? Are you ready to show people who you are? Are you ready to be that person you want to be? Do you need to increase your grit, increase your perseverance, celebrate your wins, focus more on habits than on motivation, do the things you don't feel like? Are you ready to do that so you can transition and become a property developer full-time, or run it on the side if you want to? And I suppose the reason I talk about it like this is because often people have a job and they might have children and they're time poor. And so finding that extra time or carving it out can be quite challenging. And so there is that small portion of time when you're starting out on your property development journey that it can feel really challenging. And that's when you do need that grit. For people having all the excuses in the world, what are your excuses? And this can be in any area of your life. What are the excuses that you have that need to be changed, that you need to create new habits around, that you need to increase your grit, your perseverance, so you do have success? So reflect on, if it's not property development, or if it is and you want to add something else to that, just have a think about it. What is it that you need to do? So we've got celebrate progress, go you, and I want you to reflect and adjust. I talk about the 2 in my book, 3 Ones and Hold It Up. Big plugs today on that. But I do talk about that, reflecting and adjusting. If it's not working, tweak it. And it might be mostly working, but just need a slight tweak. It's kind of like when your car radio goes off station, sometimes you just got to pull it back in line. So when you adjust and get yourself back on track, then you're going to be heading toward your goals faster. So if we don't reflect and we don't adjust, then very often we don't realize we're going in the wrong direction. And this can come about, perhaps you want to do property development, somebody else wants you to do something else with them, or your spouse, partner, mates, whoever it is, they have another idea and they're trying to get you to do that. But property's where you want to go. It's something you've always wanted to do. So when you set yourself a goal, if you go back to it every week and check, then you will know if you are staying on track, or are you being just, what's the word I'm after, like inadvertently taken off course by somebody who doesn't mean to. They've just got their goals and they want you to be part of their goal. So have a think about that. Have a think about, weekly reviewing, weekly adjusting, and making sure that you are on track. Because weekly goals and weekly goal reviews, well, help you become more consistent by around 60%. I know there's a lot of percentages in today's podcast, and if you are, and I mean 60% compared with those who do nothing. So if you are a numbers person, love a good FISO, then then this one works for you fully. And then underpinning all of that is mindset. Where is your mindset? You've heard me talk about it before. Are you a thermostat or a thermometer? Do you control it, or are you controlled by your environment? You need to control your mindset. It needs to be set by you. You determine where you go. You make yourself successful. So Carol Dweck, psychologist she found that people with a growth mindset, meaning I can't do that yet, means that you can learn to do that. They're the people who realize that with enough effort, they can get there. They actually score about 40% higher in performance tests. So if you believe you can learn something, it's just, if you're the sort of person that says I can't versus I can't yet, then the yet person is the person with the growth mindset. Interestingly, my voice is like this because I've just had a weekend in New Zealand, and it was my daughter's hens party, so it was quite celebratory. And the last day I stayed with my wee grandson who wanted me to stay and move over and live with him. He asked me every time, and I played along with him for a while, and I was a bit heartbreaking because he believed me. Why don't you stay at our house? You could live here and you can come and work at my preschool. And I said, what about when you go to school? And then what will I do? And he said, you can go and work with mum and dad. They work in the city next to each other. And I was like, okay, I could do that. But then he said to me, I said to him, well, I don't know what they do. And he goes, yes, but you can learn. You can easily learn. And I thought, whoa, that is great that he has a growth mindset, and he's 4. So he knows that if you keep trying, you can learn. And I think that as adults, we get bumped around a little bit. We get knocked down. We don't always get back up again. Excuse the pun for the song, but sometimes we get back up, and those bumps and bruises that we take along the way, they knock our confidence and they stop us doing the things we want. So I want you to think about the things that you've stopped doing and you want to do. And if one of them is property development, then reach out, have a chat. There's always a link below. But if it's not just that, if it's something else, if it is, running that 100 kilometers like Aaron does, which that's so nothing like I would want to do, but it might be something else. It might be learning the guitar. It could be planning a holiday. It could be anything. It could be buying another home or another house, buying a rental. It could be growing a business. Whatever it is that you want to do, then decide that you can learn it. So if you don't know how to do that, you don't know how to do that yet, but you can learn how to do it. So let's just wind this one up today, short and sweet, because it's time I jumped in the car and headed to the airport. But grit isn't about being unbreakable. It's about staying committed when things don't go to plan. It's passion and perseverance over the long term. It's one of the biggest predictors of success in both property development and life. Whoa. Have a think about that. Grit and perseverance are one of the biggest predictors of success in life, which includes property development. In my world, it comes first, property development and life. So education and mentorship will give you the right direction. You know that. There's us, there are other people, but there is us. And endurance, grit gives you that endurance, but combine the two, you become unstoppable. So you've got grit for the endurance, you've got education to keep you on track, or as the roadmap to follow. So I'd encourage you to take a moment and ask yourself, where are you on your journey? Have you been thinking about it? Do you want to do some property development? Are you a little bit afraid? Where are you? Is it something you've parked out for later? I'll do property development when you've given yourself a reason or an excuse or a time frame that you're working to. I want you to think about when it is that you want to do property development. You're listening to this podcast, you do want to do it. So just give yourself a date. Don't put it too far away. Why not you? And why not now? And if not you, then who? That's it. If you don't do it, somebody else will. And that happens all the time. So success doesn't come from bursts of motivation. It comes from consistency and willingness to keep going when others quit. There you go. That's so it. Because so many people quit in life when things get hard, or when things pop up and become in the way. So I hope you got something fabulous from this podcast. This is the end of the episode, and I hope that if it isn't just about property development, and maybe it's about something else, that I've inspired you to realize that it's not always going to be easy, but you can do this. Get yourself a growth mindset and decide that whatever that thing is that you want, you can have. All right, that's it from me. I will catch you next week. Bye for now. Oh, for those of you who are on the live Q&A, we will be doing it at 12 o'clock the week after, at the next one. So lunchtime Q&A, because we'll be doing it at 9 p.m. New York time. Anyway, that's it from me. Bob will be back with me next week. I'll catch you soon. Bye for now.